Hello, I'm James Mills and you're watching CATEX TV, broadcasting live from Princeton, New Jersey. Time is currently 11:30 a.m. in New York, 4:30 p.m. in London and 12:30 p.m. in Hamilton, Bermuda. We have no breaking news today, so we'll go straight to our main news. Cuba says it has suffered one of the most difficult financial years since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Economy Minister José Luis Rodriguez said the Cuban economy had grown by 4.3% in the past year, falling short of the 8% forecast by the government. President Raúl Castro called for measures including cutbacks in official travel and bonuses. Cuba was hit by hurricanes Gustav, Ike and Paloma this year, with estimated losses of nearly $10 billion. The cost of food imports has also risen by more than $8 billion on the previous year. As Cubans prepare to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the revolution, the authorities had hoped that the centrally controlled state-run economy would escape the worst of the global financial crisis. Mr. Rodriguez said the last year had been one of the most difficult since the so-called special period began, the term used for the economic crisis caused by the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union, which heavily subsidized Cuba. The president of the Cuban Parliament's Economic Commission, Osvaldo Martinez, blamed the lower growth rate on factors outside the country's control. Economic growth of 4.3% is less than the 8% foreseen in the plan, and this is explicable given the profound devastation caused by the hurricanes, the economic war waged against us, and the noticeable increase in the price of food and fuel during most of the year, he said. Meanwhile, Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim has denied that he is in talks about a rescue bid for the Honda Formula One team. Slim, who owns communications firm Telmex and a racing team, was reported to be one of 4 interested parties, but a statement said, quote, "The Telmex team can confirm that Carlos Slim Helua has not bought the Honda Formula One team, nor is holding any negotiations to do so. Therefore, all information related to this subject has no basis and is completely false." After the Honda Motor Company pulled out of Formula One earlier this month, blaming the world economic crisis, the team are trying to find a buyer to continue in the sport. Meanwhile, in the UK, the pound has hit a new record low against the euro, as the grim outlook for the UK economy continues to put downward pressure on the currency. Weak house price data and figures showing that homeowners are choosing to repay their mortgages rather than spending pushed the currency lower. Low trading levels in the foreign exchange markets also helped to force sterling down to 1.029 euros. Many analysts believe parity with the euro is now only a matter of time. The rate for tourists buying their currency before they travel has almost reached parity, where £1 buys €1. At one major high street currency exchange in the UK, €100 currently costs £99.11 sterling. And now on to some more somber news, not economic but unfortunately fighting. Israel air raids have pounded the Gaza Strip for a third day, hitting key sites linked to militant group Hamas. Gaza's Interior Ministry and Islamic University were the latest targets. Hamas says 300 Palestinians have died since Saturday, while the UN says 56 civilians are dead. In Israel, a second person was killed by a militant rocket. Defense Minister Ehud Barak said Israel was not fighting the people of Gaza, but was in a war to the bitter end with Hamas, which has ruled it since 2007. Israel has massed forces along the border and has declared the area around a narrow coastal strip a closed military zone. Dozens of centers of Hamas strength, including security compounds, government offices, and even tunnels into Egypt, have been hit since Israel started its massive bombing campaign on Saturday morning. As dawn broke on Monday, which is today, witnesses said a powerful explosion struck the Interior Ministry. Earlier, a raid destroyed a science building at the Islamic University in Gaza, a center of support for the Islamic militant group that controls the narrow coastal strip. Also hit was a house near the abandoned home of a senior Hamas leader in the southern town of Rafah. The UN relief agency in Gaza says 56 civilians have been killed by Israel fire so far, the latest being 5 girls who died in a refugee camp when Israel forces bombed a mosque near their home. The head of the emergency services in the Hamas-run coastal strip said that 312 Palestinians had been killed in all, and more than 1,400 others wounded. The latest fatality in Israel was reported to be a laborer at a building site in the city of Ashkelon that was hit by a medium-range grade missile. 3 people were reported to be seriously wounded. And this actually has far-reaching impacts. On the back of the fighting, crude oil rose as much as 12% after Israel airstrikes in the Gaza Strip raised concerns that supply from the Middle East, the world's largest producing region, may be disrupted. Prices also advanced as China, the world's second biggest energy consumer, said it will supplement its emergency oil stockpiles while prices are low, while Libya and the United Arab Emirates announced compliance with OPEC output cuts agreed this month. The instability in the Middle East may well push oil prices higher, said Rob Larfin, a senior broker with MF Global Limited in London. China's plans to stockpile crude may take up some slack from the demand destruction for the economic slowdown. And for those of us who are interested in numbers, the crude oil for February delivery rose $1.57 or 4.2% to $39.28 a barrel as of 9:32 a.m. on the New York Mercantile Exchange. Earlier it had touched $42.20 a barrel in the biggest gain seen in 2 weeks. And across the world in Thailand, Thailand's new Prime Minister Abhisit Vejjajiva has been forced to put off his opening speech to Parliament due to anti-government protests. Hundreds of protesters loyal to deposed leader Thaksin Shinawatra was surrounded by the Parliament on Monday, after tens of thousands also gathered on Sunday. The speech has now been rescheduled for Tuesday morning. Protesters say Mr. Abhisit, the third Prime Minister in 4 months, has no mandate to lead and should resign. He was elected in a parliamentary vote 2 weeks ago, after a court dissolved the former government, seen as close to Thaksin. He now faces crowds of red-clad opponents on the streets who say they object to his route to power. And we'll have to keep our eyes on this and see if there's any more political unrest in Thailand. However, in Bangladesh, polls have closed in the Bangladesh election held amid tight security that will replace the interim government after 2 years of army-backed rule. About 5,000 soldiers and 600 police were deployed to guard against election fraud and violence. The Election Commission hopes to announce results in the next few hours. The front-runners, the Awami League of Sheikh Hasina and Khaleda Zia's Bangladesh National Party, also known as the BNP, have ruled Bangladesh for years. However, both leaders were jailed for suspect corruption, but released to contest the vote. The two rivals pledged to lower food prices and tackle corruption and terrorism in the nation of 144 million people. Sheikh Hasina and Khaleda Zia also both promised to end the confrontation, strikes and violent street rallies that have marked Bangladeshi politics for years. The two women alternated in power for 15 years until 2000.